Hi, I'm Victor Lambs, and you're listening to The Secrets of Stargate, where we talk about hidden meanings and deeper layers found in the Stargate movies, TV series, and more. Joining me today are Jeff Haecker. Hello, Jeff.
Hey, Victor.
And Lisa Jones. Hi, Lisa.
Hey, Victor.
And today we are discussing the 4th episode of Season 9 of Stargate SG-1, The Ties That Bind. After Vala Maldaran removes the Cormac bracelets binding Dr. Daniel Jackson and her together, they go their separate ways, only to pass out again soon after. The only chance to save them is to see the scientist who was examining the bracelets. However, in order to get him to help, they must run a series of even more dangerous errands. And that's the short synopsis there. We can get into all the fun and hijinks that ensue in this episode, but first, Jeff, what did you think of this episode?
Yeah, I thought this one was an okay one. I remember it fondly being kind of the fetch quest one where they have to go, it reminds me of a video game quest where you're trying to get one item and you have to go get items for 5 other people because they need an item. And so I remember it fondly for that. And after rewatching, I think it's still okay. Not one of the, better episodes of the series. So far in the season, it's probably on par for me, but I thought it was an okay one. I thought it was just a fun kind of adventure of the week, and we'll start getting more serious very soon with the show. So with the season, so I thought it was an okay little diversion.
Excellent. And how about you, Lisa?
I kind of agree with Jeff. I think this was Carter's still gone. I think Amanda Tapping was on maternity leave, so we have Vala with us for a little while. And I thought it was kind of a fun little jaunt. You had this go find one thing and other thing, and it gave us time, I think, to really start to get to know the new SGC, with Major Landry, and I can't think of the doctor's name off the top of my head.
Lamb.
Sorry.
Easy for me to remember. Yeah.
Yeah. I hope now that I made that connection, I will remember it. It's we get to know Vala a little better, and we get to see how Cameron Mitchell, really leads his team, and so it wasn't so much Daniel just sitting around rolling his eyes with Vala, pawing on him. But we they actually did something in this episode, and we realized that Vala's friends are just like Vala. They're all thieves and liars and smugglers and whatever. And we get to find out what's going on Earth now that Atlantis is there, kind of like the Stargate budget, in that Atlantis took all of SG-1's budget, I'm assuming.
Yep.
On Earth, Atlantis
very
took
close
all
to
of
it, yeah.
the SGC's budget. So I kind of like it. It's fun. I did cringe though, Vala in the courtroom, or the hearing room, but other than that, it was kind of fun.
Yeah, my initial reaction was that it was Stargate epic cringe, but but it's so listening to the commentary helped, because if you just watch this episode for what it is and you're expecting, season 9 of Stargate, you're like, gosh, Vala's really like a sociopath. Like, why are we rooting for her again? But listening to the commentary, they wrote this episode actually before they wrote Origin. They wrote this after Avalon, but before Origin, and they were under such time pressures, I think, that that's the reason why they brought Martin Garrow in, who's like one of the lead writers for Atlantis, to kind of help them, block out the episode and come up with the ideas. And then Malazzi and Mully wrote it. They really just wanted to have kind of just a fun episode, and like you say, spend some more time with the new characters. And yeah, even some of the notes they got from Robert Cooper was, this feels a lot like a season 3 episode of Stargate, where we're just going around alien planets and stuff, and it didn't feel very Stargate-y, so they had to incorporate more elements of that. But there are good things in this. I remember Wallace Shawn being, wasted in this episode. I don't think he's wasted. I think in his few short scenes, he's certainly underutilized, and there's a couple of character beats that I think would have, made the episode land a little bit better. For example, it's not clear at the end if Wallace Shawn's character was playing them the other time because he's, just as devious as Vala, or if he really thought he could break the ties that bind or not. But And there was additional humor in here. Fortunately, we don't get the bathroom joke that they were going to work in with the ring transporters. And
I don't think it was missed.
yeah. And the mysterious power coil as well was toned down quite a bit, the purpose of that. So fortunately. So I think they just wanted to come up with like a fun episode on the fly, but kind of misjudged the way some of the humor would land with Stargate fans who've been watching the show for 8+ years at this point.
I think it's easier for us because we saw it originally. I think it's easier for us to understand and appreciate this episode looking backwards than maybe we did when we first saw it coming off of season 8. So now we know what seasons 9 and 10 look like. We know that it was a kind of a reboot of the show. And so I feel like I'm a lot more forgiving and just understanding of the characters and what they were doing and can appreciate it for what it was. I'll wait till later about the Ori if I say that, but at least for now. and also I find interesting, and I just thought of this, that with Vala, we've gotten some of her background, and of course we don't know how much is true, how much is her spinning tales to get sympathy. But I think that the way things work in 2024, at least, I don't know about 2025 yet, but I think that the society culture of today is a lot more understanding of characters who do bad things because of their backstories than maybe we were in the early 2000s. I have Gen Zer kids, and like this is how they think. Like, person's trauma shapes them, and therefore they're forgiving when they act out because of that. Not excusing it. I'm not saying it's okay. I'm just saying you see that in the TV shows, the movies, and I hadn't thought of that before versus how, Gen Xers treated things in the early 2000s.
Yeah, I could see that. And when we do start to move into Stargate Universe, we get a little of that where I won't say the ship is full of Valas, but the ship is pretty much full of Valas. To some degree. But no, I could definitely appreciate that. And I don't think the writers were really thinking of that. They intended this to be kind of a silly romp. And with some good guest stars, like we mentioned Wallace Shawn, who they were casting this episode. They talked to Wallace Shawn's agent. The agent was like, "Oh yeah, he's a huge fan of Stargate." And they're like, "Oh, that's great. Yeah, we'll bring him on the show." And then he came on the show and they're like, "Well, are you familiar with the show?" He's like, "No, I've never seen it before. I don't own a TV." And the guy who plays Senator Fisher, Bruce Gray, had never seen the show before. And before he came on the show, he actually called Joseph Malazzi and with Paul Mully, spent an hour on like a conference call, just like going through the entire history of Stargate because he wanted to look like he knew what he was talking about when he got into his, very brief scene. And I don't think they brought him back. They were thinking about maybe creating something where they could bring him back, but I don't think we see him again. Mm-hmm. So that was good. And then certainly we haven't mentioned Caius yet, played by Malcolm Scott, who's a smuggler, pirate turned monk, who's part of this, chain of swaps or fetch quests, as you say, Jeff. And I think he was probably best known at the time, judging from the commentary, for some commercials he made for a chain of restaurants called Chubby Chicken. Maybe that will resonate with Canadians. I don't think. I think we'd call that body positive chicken now, but yeah.
They probably renamed themselves nowadays.
Yeah. Chick Chabay or something maybe, but I'm sure I'm not the first person to make that joke. And then, so we get some, and then I think Michael P. Northey is Inago, the kind of scurrilous junk merchant. Yeah. But I like the swap episodes. I do like that. Yeah. And they get some good momentum going, and then they absolutely kill it by having the momentum by coming back to Earth and then having to go to the congressional hearing. It's like, hey, we've got this fun little, swap quest going on. it's almost as if like in the middle of the best episode I think that's done a swap quest like this, and we were talking about this last week when we were preparing for this episode, was the Deep Space Nine, Star Trek Deep Space Nine episode In the Cards, where Jake and Nog have to run around the station trading with, friend and foe alike in order to get a baseball card for Captain Sisko, which will cheer him up because obviously they're in the middle of a war. And it would almost be like if we had that episode and then stop for 20 minutes for them to go into like Federation chambers and debate Federation policy or finances, even worse, which is what we get here. So it's very, very George Lucas of them, I guess, in order like lightsaber battles. And now we're going to stop the plot and talk about trade routes for 20 minutes. But
I didn't mind the break because I liked it because it's like Vala has you jumping through all these hoops. And then it's like they came to their senses and went, wait a second. What exactly are we willing to do for this? And then we go back and then it gives them the motivation to go hijack a cargo ship. So, because they're like, yeah, no, we gotta get out.
Get rid of her.
Yeah. And while I cringed at Vala in the courtroom, because part of me is like, why would you bring her there? Can't you just leave her outside the door?
Exactly.
Yeah, with someone watching her. But I will say I did like, we all have watched too much politics this year. I did like the fact that she told the guy off in the way that she did, because it was kind of like what everyone at home watching stupid politicians things, you just want to tell them to their face like what you think their motivation is. And so I did appreciate that. There was a little, clap going on. I just didn't like her sitting on the bench.
Yeah. And I could see how they might bring her in because like, well, we have Teal'c here and he understands, and whenever they would need to talk about how bad the Goa'uld were, they bring Teal'c and he could say like,
indeed,
you are in fact quite doomed. They are quite more dangerous than you would anticipate. And so Vala, I guess maybe they were expecting her, but yeah, they did even say that, when they get to that point in the quest where they need to get a cargo ship and it's guarded by the new baddies, the Lucian Alliance, which is
those guys are not
kind of a goofy
smart.
way. The goofy way to introduce them, I guess. But they did say, they would just call it off there. And so the other kind of, I think, missed character moment, and I would probably put this on the director, is I think afterwards, Beau Bridges, this General Landry, should have been a lot more angry than he reads as. Like when he's walking down, he's like, yeah, she told off a senator. I want her off the base. I think he should have been like fuming a little bit more, and then that would have actually, shown that the Vala actually did cross a line, whereas now it just seems like, oh, that Vala, she's a tricky little minx.
He probably agreed with her.
Tell off a senator.
Yeah, I mean, I think too they were wanting us to like Vala, so they didn't want to like have somebody be angry at her too much, because we already have that with Daniel. Like he's kind of the focal point of that interaction of the anti-Vala storyline. So if they had Lander doing it too, if they're trying to get us to ingratiate ourselves with Vala, then that might have put it over the top. And I was going to say I do like the scene of the courtroom too, because it's kind of planting a seed for the season and kind of linking to Atlantis, saying this is where our resources need to go, and they're like, well, we've defeated the Goa'uld, we're fine now. But I mean have they not learned anything? And I mean it just kind of goes back to the how the government officials in this show often are not the smartest. They're like, oh, we're fine, we can just slash the budget, there's no more threats out there, and then boom, there's another. And they there's a whole thing about, oh, you just made up the story about the Ori, which is what Kinsey said about Daniel when he went through the alternate the mirror and saw the Goa'uld were coming in, and turns out they were. So it's like, I mean they've saved the planet how many times, and you don't want to trust them that maybe we should take this seriously. So I like that kind of setting up that that interaction there. And you almost think like, because at the end they talk about, oh, we're gonna if we want a full budget we have to get an IOA observer, and you almost think, is it going to be that guy? But if I'm remembering correctly, it's a character we've met once before who will show up here, or if they bring it back, I can't remember exactly.
Yeah, and they were, from the commentary, it sounded like they almost were going to bring Woolsey back full time at this point, but they had felt like they'd introduced too many characters that in order to make him like a series regular would have been just one character too many.
See, and I liked the courtroom part too. It's a hearing, I guess. I liked the hearing because it really help them reestablish what is their mission. Right? Because,
Yeah.
it had been to find, technology and stuff to help aid us in our fight against the Goa'uld and defend our planet. And now the Goa'uld are gone, the replicators are gone. Now what? And so, I don't know, I kind of, again, it's a reset. And I liked that part of it, that they said that.
Yeah. And so that's interesting, too. We do, sorry. We do get to see we're starting to see more of Cameron Mitchell.
Mm-hmm.
Initially writing this, his part wasn't very big because they were still in the mindset of like, he's the leader of SG-1, he's the Richard Dean Anderson character, and Richard Dean Anderson was only like filming 3 days a week and only in a few scenes per episode, if that. And so in their mind, they weren't writing it as like a full-time, main character until I think one of the producers said to him, it's like, he's contracted for 20 full episodes this season, so you can write as many scenes as you want with him. You don't have to try and plan it out like you did with Richard Dean Anderson. So we start to see more of him. I think we're supposed to, I don't know if we're supposed to, from this episode, understand that there's something going on between Mitchell and Dr. Lamb. Because like they come out of a turbo lift, I think, in this episode, and Landry sees him or something. And I think originally they had more scenes written that kind of established more of a relationship between the two of them.
Yeah, I noticed he was,
if I'm remembering correctly.
I noticed he was fiddling with his BDU jacket or shirt. And I didn't think I never really picked up on that being any kind of a relationship thing. But I could see that if they were kind of talking about that idea, that could have been a hint of that. They never pay that off. So
yeah, I completely missed that.
Yeah, see, certain things are way too subtle, and certain things are way too not subtle. Like Vala coming on to the female airman.
That was funny though.
Yeah. Apparently there was a take where she winked back, but they wanted like the no nonsense. And then of course Daniel goes to his room and Vala's in there, and even Mlotsi Miller were writing like how did she get into the room? And the director was like, William Waring was like, no, like run it back. You can see that when Daniel walks by, the female airman like way in the background just hangs her head in shame for like letting Vala into Daniel's room or something. And then of course Vala comes on to Daniel, and Daniel does his like nice lady thing.
I do find Daniel's approach to Vala very confusing, because for 8 seasons he has been like, oh, hi, attractive woman. Like
hitting himself on the head with a shoe, his tongue rolling out and his eyes going, ooga.
And with her, it's not just that he's not interested or whatever. It's that he's so like angry with her all the time and upset with her all the time, and it just seems like an about face. It's like they took him and like changed his character to be, I don't know, to be very different, like his personality in that way. I'd much rather the way Cameron Mitchell just kind of is like whatever.
Yeah
Well, I mean, I think it goes back to their first introduction when she kidnapped the Daedalus or the Prometheus and took him hostage and whatnot. And then she held him hostage again with the bracelets and led to, let's all that. So I think it's just that he's like, she's always going to be up to something. And I can't, even if there's a hint of attraction to her, I can't, I can't give an inch because she'll take a mile because, she's very over the top and aggressive in that way. And, and we'll see a softening of that in the coming seasons as well. So it doesn't last forever, because I think we only have a couple more with Vala before she's off for a while. And then she comes back later. So I think that part at least will come to an end, because I think that's when Sam comes back too.
Yeah.
Yeah. She had like a 6 episode arc that she was doing.
And then
she's
I would say we got Teal'c rejoined for a few a little bit of the episode, which was it was just nice. It was nice to see them together, but I liked how Teal'c was like, I'm only here to support Daniel Jackson. Like, I'm not rejoining SG-1. No.
Yeah. Of course not. Yeah.
I'm not till I am. And we haven't talked about their outfits yet. We really need to address
the boy shorts in the room, or
the weirdness of these like leather pleather pants with the dusters and if you wanted to make Cameron Mitchell and Daniel Jackson look any more alike, dress them
Exactly. Well, they even bring up again on the commentary the beards. It's like, they when they cast them and they're like, they look a lot alike, and all the writers were like, no, they don't. And then they got the two of them were in a room for the first time together, and they were like, Michael Shanks was like, I got to grow the beard,
Yeah.
But yeah, so this, I think the outfits were an homage to both Farscape and Firefly. Yeah. So it was So they have the dusters. They're looking very Farscape and Firefly in this one.
Yeah, cowboy in space. Yeah.
And for once, they don't just dress in their uniforms and go off planet and say, "We're from Earth. You can get to it by getting here."
Exactly.
Actually, go undercover for a change.
And so Vala's bright red seduction outfit. Apparently, the way they do this on Stargate is they tell the actress, like, okay, you need to dress in something revealing for the scene, so go down to wardrobe and pick out whatever you're comfortable wearing. So, and that's what she had picked out. So
Claudia comes back. Okay.
I'm ready for my close-up, Mr. DeMille. But
well, considering some of the outfits she's worn and everything else, the tank top was probably covered up a little bit more.
Yeah.
Not the underwear, obviously, but the tank top at least was covering a little bit more than some of her leather outfits.
Yeah. Right. So then they go back into space. They get all the stuff. We get to see Tanat and Jup again, who we saw in Prometheus Unbound.
They're like the most clueless.
Yeah.
Can we call them bad guys even? Like, I love that. That was great.
Yeah. And they don't get the Naquadah. They don't get Vala. They get ring transporter switcherooed. And this cargo ship has some tricks up its sleeve, as we find out, because the Lucian Alliance is there in one place with all of their ships for whatever reason, and they trick them with some holograms, and then basically a spaced version of an EMP to get away.
Mm-hmm. So Caius, the monk, that was his name, right? That was his ship. I think that was the point when I was watching. I watched it with my whole family's home for the holidays. I think that was the point where they all started laughing. They absolutely loved the fact that this, pious looking monk, that they're worshiping this, piece of metal, engine or whatever, coil. And then he's like, you got to get me out of here. And it turns out he's a smuggler in hiding. They love that. They thought that was so much fun.
He does a good job with that, yeah.
Blessed day.
Blessed day.
Yeah.
And the whole line about how he has to bathe the poor. And, it's like, well, why can't the poor bathe themselves? Or maybe that's why they're poor, type thing. But as they were commenting on the commentary track. But yeah, so that was really well done.
They love that little twist there. They thought that was so much fun. And that he knew that they were worshiping a piece of worthless whatever, but they had, I like that they had so many little fun beats in it. So you're not really focusing on the fact that it wasn't boring. You're just going one place to another place to another place. They had interesting characters all along the route. And what would have made it even better is if we could got Wallace Shawn to just throw in one inconceivable.
Exactly.
That would have been the icing on the cake. I don't know why he didn't do that. They should have or written something in it that kind of sounded like that.
Yeah.
I don't know. I was missing that. But it took my kids a minute to remember who he was. They were like, he looks really familiar.
Yes, one of the greatest stage actors and playwrights of a generation. And
yeah. I'm like, Sicilian. Think of the word Sicilian.
Well,
death on the line, like, come on. And they were like, oh, Princess Bride. And I'm like, yes.
Well, and it's funny his bit where he's trying to describe the relationship that he and Vala had. And it's supposed to get uncomfortable because it's like little Wallace Shawn talking about, Vala that way. But he does this little things where he has his like little fingers chasing each other. He's like, hey, we would run along that, and then we'd like lie down and stuff. And you're like, and Wallace Shawn just threw that in. He came up with that on his own and just put that in there. And
that was the best.
As a way of making people visualize it when they don't really want to visualize it.
I also like the lean in that Mitch and Jackson do, where they're he's like, leaning in, and they lean in, and there's stuff on the table, and Jackson has to like shove it out of the way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when they were on the monk's planet, they have the power coil there, and I guess Ben Browder and Michael Shanks were like, well, why wouldn't they just take the power coil? And so Michael Shanks threw in that thing where he gets shocked by it. That wasn't in the script. And then as soon as he did that, they had to like spend money on visual effects to show the force field. So that little ad lib wound up costing them several $1,000s for.
But that was a nice touch because otherwise you're like, dude, why don't you just grab it and run?
Yeah.
You've got McKay wants to steal, ZPMs from children,
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Daniel probably he doesn't want to upset the religion of a people, so he wouldn't have wanted to just take it. I mean, although I guess they are going to steal it.
I don't know, to get rid of Vala, he might have.
That's true.
He's like, religion, Vala.
Because I think they say that the planet was a Gould planet, and so there's people who still worship the Gould, and this religion or whatever it is kind of replaces that. And he's like, if you take if I just disappear, the people if you try to steal this, I'll just send these fanatics after you anyway. So also not the best depiction of religion because
they're still worshiping the Gould Granis, who we didn't who we haven't met, but is dead now, so it doesn't really matter anyway. So. Yeah.
And I also like the Jaffa, I forget his name, like the weapons trader. Because they're trying to get the thing from him. And he's like, and you kind of get an insight into what an average non-military leader or non-military Jaffa might do, or someone who's like maybe not a high ranking, like he's not on Dakara, being one of the delegates. He's like trying to survive in this world of, in this post Gould, society, and how's he gonna, and that's kind of where the Lucian Alliance also steps in, is there's weapons trading and eventually some cocaine corn and other things.
Yeah,
so.
That's like a very good point. Like a power vacuum and their way of life has changed. So what is a Jaffa who doesn't need Jaffa anymore? What does he do? He sells very unique knives. And if you act now, you can get 2 for 1. It's one of a kind.
And that planet, the set there was the medieval set from Avalon, the medieval village set, just redressed a little bit. And then so that was kind of cool to see how many times they're going to redress that. And the little kids who ran by the hallway there and kind of brushed by them, the boy and the girl, those are Ben Browder's kids.
Aw, that's cute.
Anything else we want to say about this episode?
Well, I was a bit nervous on our group chat, like this was an episode. Oh no. And, and actually, I don't know if I'd watched it yet when I was getting those messages from y'all. And so it was just kind of, I was prepared for, but I was like, no, this was actually kind of fun. I enjoyed it. It did feel like one of y'all said earlier, like a season 3 kind of an episode, which I walked in the other day and my family was watching a season 3 episode, and I walked in and I'm like, it just doesn't look as good, like the quality compared to what we're used to now.
They're shooting on like 16 millimeter film. It's all underlit and stuff. Yeah.
It was crazy. But you're right. Going back to those, we did used to have kind of just, we can go back and listen to our podcast, talk about them. Just kind of, I don't want to say not as great, but like a little looser, a little more fun, a little like our expectations weren't as high, a little more character driven, that kind of stuff. And so I think that the last couple of seasons of Stargate really, just kind of pushed the quality meter up a lot. And we got really used to just the last couple of seasons. And so now season 9, do have to just kind of like take a breath and watch it again with fresh eyes and keep our expectations at a, I don't say low, but like a medium level, and just enjoy it for what it is.
And remembering the slog that these seasons can become when they get bogged down in Ori plots, like this was kind of a fun one that we can look back on fondly.
Gotta enjoy these. And they did mention the Ori in this episode, and that priors were showing up on other planets in the galaxy. And so we're not, it's still there. Like it's still coming.
Yeah. Yeah, I also liked in this one, I don't think we talked about it, but when Landry's like, he's talking to Walter, what do I have today? He's like, you've got meetings all day, sir. And he's like, Walter, you just take the meetings. And
Yes.
he's like saying, you go do it. And he's like, don't make me promote you. And Walter's like, what? Okay, wait, yes, sir.
Yeah.
That was Walter's just the great, he's like Radar from MASH, just like the most efficient, assistant guy or whatever. So.
Yeah. That was good.
And it's interesting that Landry wants like Walter to basically take the stack of briefings and forums and summarize it for him. And now you're thinking it's like, we'll just feed that into like, an LLM and it would summarize it for you like in 2 seconds.
20 years ago.
Yeah. You would have to hire someone to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. They should have acquired, they had to have acquired some kind of technology for that, some kind of AI or something.
Yeah.
You would think.
It would just have like Reese's head. Was it Reese the name of the replicator android?
Oh, yeah.
Just have her like in a corner just summarizing.
That's what Carter's working on at Area 51.
Yeah.
She created AI. All right. Do we have any foreign languages?
Yes,
titles?
we do. In German, we get so most of them were the ties that bind or some riff on that. In German, it's called invisible ties or unschickbar Fesseln. And then in Japanese, we got unbreakable ties, which is Kiranai Kazuna. So I don't know why we're seeing more Japanese titles this season, unless it just finally started making its way over there.
Yeah.
If we have any Japanese Stargate fans, let us know what your experience has been with the show. Did it air, as it aired here? Was it brought over later? Or does nobody there watch it? I guess we'll find out.
Speaking of, one last thing that I liked about this episode was that the resolution was, it just wears off.
Yeah. And that's...
After all of that.
And that's why I think it would have kind of been funny if Wallace Shawn's character, Arlos, if he had known like the whole time there was no cure and he just wanted his mom's bracelet back or necklace back, and just like thought up the whole like, I'll have to tell you to get his. I think that's what we're meant to infer, is that he just did all that to get his.
That's how I took it.
Yeah.
And I love that the necklace wasn't for like a new lover or whatever. It was his mom.
Yeah.
I thought it was hysterical. Back. Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's how I took it. That, he knew he was just trying to get something for the information it'll wear off anyway.
Excellent. And we do have some feedback. This is feedback, I believe, from our Avalon episode. Georgette Fan 684 writes, "Don't knock the Stargate clipisodes." We were talking then about how, it was almost like a clipisode there. They often advance the story. Citizen Joe of season 8 had the stones, the communication stones first. There's a Dial the Gate episode that reveals Lou Gossett Jr. and Beau Bridges almost had each other's role. And so I think that would have been very interesting.
That would have been.
Lou Gossett Jr. as General Landry. And then lastly, I think that until she got killed, Daniel was apathetic towards Vala. So, still kind of apathetic or antagonistic, but I think we'll see that start to change, as you mentioned.
For sure.
Excellent. And with that, we'd like to take a moment to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create Secrets of Stargate, including Brantley M., James D., Matt L., Matthew F., and Mitchell R. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue the Secrets of Stargate and all the shows at StarQuest. And you can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. And be sure to follow the show on Apple Podcasts, TuneIn, Spotify, iHeartRadio, or find our video versions at youtube.com/StarQuestMedia. And to find previous episodes of Secrets of Stargate and to send feedback, please visit sqpn.com/Stargate. You can email us at stargate@sqpn.com or follow StarQuest on social media at facebook.com/StarQuestMedia or on X at SQPN. And we'll be back next time with the next episode of Atlantis. Do it. It's actually Do it. Duet, which is another fun episode. Until then, Jeff Haecker, thank you for joining us and sharing the Secrets of Stargate.
Thanks, Victor.
And Lisa Jones, thank you as well.
Thanks, Victor.
And once again, I'm Victor Lambs. Thank you for listening to The Secrets of Stargate on StarQuest. And remember, it's not what you think. I'm not after revenge. The truth is, the bracelets weren't the only thing she took from me. She also stole my heart.
Anyway, I'm sorry, but that just happens to be how I feel about it. What do you think?